1991, I realized I was failing out of accounting and I needed to get a second plan. So I did what anybody in Clarion would do. I went to work for the biggest employer I could find, Kmart. I can tell you're impressed. I went to work for Kmart not because it was the best job I could find, but it was because it was a job I could find. And I remember the day that I sat down to interview with the Vice President of Human Resources for the East Coast. She wanted me to join their management training program, and she said something to me that I remember to this day. She said, 1 in 7 people will work for Kmart throughout their lifetime. 1 in 7 people will work for Kmart in their lifetime. And she was so proud, she said, that means we are a powerful force. I thought it meant, that means you don't like the people that work for you. I proved to be right. Mr. Toastmaster, my fellow Toastmasters, Kmart is a great example of what has happened to retailers and businesses all across this country in the last few years. They've decided that their macro level understanding of who their customer is, when pushed on a micro level individual, should work every single time. That's why Kmart is going out of business. They don't know their customer. And every time I go and talk to a retailer, I hear the same things. It's all the millennials' fault.
Of course.
It's all the millennials' fault. They don't shop the way everyone else used to. They don't buy in bulk the way your generation did. They don't try to keep up with the Joneses like their grandparents did. It's all their fault. I hold up a mirror to them at that point and say, I wonder who it is that raised this millennial generation. And I get this blank stare. What do you mean by that? Millennials are different. They are just as different as those in Generation X, and just as different as baby boomers. And they're going to be just as different as the following generations. Every time you hear someone say, millennials are ruining everything, sit back and think, when did you first hear that about yourself? And I remember it was a week after I started at Kmart. When my boss said, your generation is ruining everything. Wow. And it's true. Every generation ruins everything when compared to the generation before them. It's not because we're wrong, it's just that we're different. There's different filters that every generation uses to figure out what's important to them, to where they're going to go, how they're going to vote, how they're going to spend their money. Every generation is just different. But here's the thing that drives me nuts. When you talk to organizations, what they want to do is they want to figure out, how do millennials think? How does Generation X think? If we could just get a training class to teach us how to deal with millennials, we'll be fine. No, you won't be fine. Because just because you understand the macro concept of what a millennial does, doesn't mean you understand how to connect with Marvin, Michelle, David. There's a huge difference between the macro level understanding of a generation and the micro level understanding who is physically shopping in your store today. Who is standing in front of you today? We get that wrong almost every single time. Here's what it's led to. You open up the paper, if you're my grandparents and parents. You open up your phone, if you're me. You think about the chip embedded in your brain, if you're a millennial 20 years from now. And what you read and what you begin to understand is that retail and shopping is different. But it's not millennials' fault. It's the retailer's fault. It's the business's fault. How many of you have lived in Orlando for more than 5 years? More than 10 years? More than 20 years? If you've been here for more than 20 years, do you remember when Millennial Mall was built?
Yes.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, that was.
Do you remember when they added the extra wing on Florida Mall?
Yep.
Do you remember when they built Disney Springs, when it stopped being Carpe PM and started being come shop with us?
Yeah.
Do you remember when they redid the outlet centers? Retail has added footprint to Orlando, but you know what they haven't added? Residents. We have 3% more people here today than we had here in 1998. We have 26% more retail space. And I wonder why stores have trouble meeting their projected sales. If you lived around this area, Altamonte Mall used to be a big thing. It used to be a destination to shop. So did Seminole Mall. Then they built the outlets in Daytona, they built the outlets in St. Augustine, they built the outlets everywhere, and it stopped being a destination. But who is it that's to blame? Is it the retailer that said, if I build it, they will come? Or is it the new generation that says, if you build it, I want to be entertained? It's not your fault. And guess what? 20 years from now, when millennials are my age, and the next generation is coming in, and people are saying, oh, it's all their fault. Guess whose fault it won't be? Their fault. We as a society seem to want to put all of this onus on how we understand the macro level of all the people around us. We want to understand how Floridians think, how Orlandoans think, how Americans think, how millennials think. I encourage you today, stop looking so big. I want to know how you think, and how you think. What do you think? Mr. Toastmaster?